Hi,
Hey
thank
Donna,
you.
this is
Good
Tina. Can you
afternoon.
hear
Thank you
me?
for your patience. We seem to be running into a little bit of some technical difficulty. We have our presenter, Tina Patterson, on the line, and we're having some um, audio issues, so bear with us just one moment. We're running a check right now. I'm going to
Donna,
ask a
can you hear
question.
me?
Can any of you hear me okay? I just want to make sure that my audio is working. I see that, Angela, you had asked a question, how long it would be before we start? So you can hear, I can hear you and Tina. Okay, great. All right, well, just because Tina and I can't hear each other, then we'll go ahead and we'll begin.
We'll turn it over to Tina.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and turn this over to Tina, so bear with me.
And we'll dial in as a listener.
Just about 1 second. All right, Tina, I'm going to go ahead and switch over the presentation to you.
Or should I introduce Tina?
Yes, please.
Can we dial in and hear her? I'm not using mine, so just dial in.
Okay. I can do it from a different. I don't have the number here, though. To my email. Oh, okay.
But it's on mute. We don't want to.
Barbara, do you want to make the introduction or do you want me to go ahead and make the introduction? I'm going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. Folks, I apologize regarding the audio concerns. My name is Tina Patterson. I'm principal with Jade Solutions. I'm going to be talking this afternoon about strategies on how to
Thank you, David. We did not realize that. So yes, we will have Barbara go ahead and do the intro. We're sorry, we can't hear. We're kind of trying to log in as a...
We're flying blind. Hi, I'm Barbara Ash, and welcome, and thank you for your patience. I am so excited to be able to have Tina Patterson present today. I'm the National Director of the Veteran Institute for Procurement, and I want to thank you and welcome you to the this incredible webinar. This is the buying season. Oh, my favorite time. Strategies on how to respond to opportunities. This webinar was developed with the goal to help veteran businesses accelerate their growth in the federal marketplace. And that is what VIP is all about, right? Accelerating your success as veteran-owned small business government contractors. And I am so glad to report that it is working. Our surveys continue to come back and show that on average, VIP graduates grow over 50% in just 1 year. As you know, we have a number of different curriculums. We have VIP Grow, which is for companies already in the federal market, VIP Start for those wanting to get procurement ready, and International for those who want to expand and enter into global markets. This webinar is made possible thanks to the support of SBA. Its goal is to provide you the resources you need and to the veteran business outreach centers located throughout the country that support veteran-owned government contractors with entrepreneurial development services such as business training, counseling, and mentoring. And is also a resource for our VIP alumni. So please make sure you get in touch with your VBOCs across the country. I want you to know that the slides and audio from today's webinar will be made available on the VIP website at nationalvip.org. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce a leader in her field, Tina Patterson. She is the principal of Jade Solutions, a women-owned certified small business with more than 20 years experience providing management consulting services in the areas of proposal and grant management support, facilitation support, and product marketing to a wide range of clients. She has supported local and national public engagement efforts via organizations such as America Speaks, Public Engagement Associates, to name a few. And she, of course, is an instructor and VIP. Please join me in welcoming Tina Patterson on this incredible presentation on how you can manage your proposals during this busy buying season. And Tina, I'm turning it over to you now. And thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome, Barbara. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping that you can hear me. And if you are not able to hear me, that you would indicate in the chat box. But I think I heard earlier from one of the participants that you could hear both the VIP staff as well as me. I'd like to go ahead and get started. I know everyone's time is precious, and I want to make sure that I provide ample opportunity for the participants to ask questions. I know one of the start slides indicated that not all questions would be answered. I'll do my best to answer as many as possible, and any questions that we're not able to answer during today's presentation, I will be happy to address offline. As Barbara mentioned, as we move forward into the fourth quarter for the federal government, there is a great deal of angst and concern regarding the spending and what does that look like. For those of you that are in the Washington, D.C. area, you may have seen a headline that in Washington Technology, and the headline was, "How will 2018's fiscal year-end spending spree play out?" One of the things that's unique regarding 2018 is that the federal agencies have nearly 2 months left to wrap up their contracting business for the current fiscal year, but they got the budget 7 months late. So we're anticipating both in the proposal support world as well as for contractors responding to solicitation that the activity will be more brisk than what we've seen in previous years. And many of us are trying to prepare. I'm hoping as a result of today's webinar that the takeaways will be for you effective tips to address quick turnaround on RFPs or any other solicitation types, whether they're RFQs, RFIs. Also give you some suggestions regarding tools to help manage the flow of RFP requests, and then to talk about solicitation trends. As a bonus, when I was preparing the slide deck, I also saw some information regarding what's trending, and that is in the back of this PowerPoint presentation at the end. I won't be covering that in this webinar today, but I definitely wanted you to have that. I'm sure as you look at the trends, and there are 10 trends that are provided in the back of this deck, that you'll see that many of these trends are starting to reach national attention. And as you move forward with conducting your business and reaching out to potential clients, keep those trends in mind as you consider how you want to move forward with your business development and capture efforts. What I want to do is share with you my experience both as a proposal manager and supporting businesses, as well as the experiences supporting federal contractors as employers. Give you some takeaways, some tips, some tools. As you know, when we think about the buying season, multiple things come to mind. First is multiple solicitations issued in a single day. Oftentimes, those solicitations have a short response time. Sometimes they're 3 days, sometimes they're 24 hours, or 2 weeks. We also know that we are juggling when we see these solicitations as they come forward. Oftentimes, there's requirements related to personnel, specific citizenship requirements, security clearance requirements, education, certifications, as well as a mix of requirements for elements such as place of performance and equipment furnished. And in other words, this is the makings of what could be a frantic time. And again, what I want to share with you are tips, strategies, and approaches that I've used with clients that you can implement easily, whether you are a small business or you've been in business for a number of years and you considered a medium or mid-tier company or a large company. So the strategies that I'll discuss are applicable across the board. If nothing else, I urge you to consider preparing now. We are going to see an uptick in activity within the next 30 days. I anticipate that it will probably begin around mid-August, mid to late August, if not sooner. But what I suggest to clients is that they begin selecting the content that can be used now. That is, taking a look at what you've worked on in terms of solicitation responses and address any past performance write-ups, shoring in those past performance write-ups so that if there's updated metrics, kudos, if there's any additional CPARS information that you want to include in your past performance, if there's any corrective actions that you put in place to assist the client, that you address those and go ahead and update the past performance. But you also take a look at your executive summaries and for which ones would you prefer to use, which ones could use additional tweaking. The same would apply for staffing plans and security plans. I didn't list here, but also think about your quality control plans. Are there any lessons learned from the current fiscal year that you can apply, either with working with clients or trends that you know that would be of interest to a prospective client? Again, just because it's the busy buying season, the client still wants to know what sets you apart. What will you bring? What pain will you solve? What problem will you help them sort out? So think about that as you're selecting your content and how you present that content. I often talk with clients also about getting and making sure that they are looking at, and I want to talk about the past performances because the past performance has become a concern, especially when we're talking about agencies that only want to see prime work and you may have subcontracting work. Ask the question if you can present the subcontracting work. Don't let that stymie you from moving forward if you're interested in responding to a solicitation. The other aspect of past performance that I want to talk about is taking a look at these past performances and making sure that your dollar value amount is up to date, and if there's any modifications that have occurred on the past performance or on that project. Oftentimes we see, especially for those businesses that have been in existence for a number of years, that a past performance is on the edge of being no longer considered recent. If that is the case, one way to approach the past performance dilemma is to weave that information regarding the soon to expire or now expired past performance as part of your capabilities and select another past performance that highlights your work. The other aspect I want to talk about is making sure that your registration in SAM, the System for Award Management, is up to date. And many of you may have noticed that more recent solicitations now indicate that instead of filling out Section K of the solicitation, the Reps Insert section, that they encourage you to go to SAM to download a copy of your Reps Inserts. SAM has two provisions now. One provision is to download a copy of your FAR report, or you can download a copy of your FAR and DFAR report to include in the solicitation response. So you no longer have to copy and paste from Section K in the solicitation. The FAR and DFAR report are in a PDF format that you can keep handy and upload into your solicitation response as needed. But preparing now helps with having to navigate SAM. The SAM registration process takes about, if you have not logged into SAM since June 29th of this year, you will need to log back in, update your password, and once you update your password, you'll have access to retrieve your Reps Inserts FAR and DFAR report. It takes about 10-15 minutes, but it's easier to do it now than to be in the midst of responding to one of these quick turnaround solicitations and feel that you're being delayed. As a side note, I want to share with you a notification I received yesterday. You may be aware of this, but I want to just make you aware of it as well, that in addition to, and I'm going to share this with you, it's my screen, it's not in the handout, but change is coming. So I've talked about the FAR report, the Reps Inserts being in SAM, but also know that this migration is part of a larger migration for SAM, which includes the other applications that you see here, including FedBizOps and another application that I'm going to talk about on the next slide, which is the Federal Procurement Data Systems it is also migrating to SAM, and as you can see, it's in progress. Data confirmation is the next area that as far as a strategy to responding to solicitations in the busy buying season. And this data confirmation ties back to what I just mentioned in terms of looking at the various applications to make sure that your information is accurate and up to date. If you have data in CPARS, making sure that you do have a CPARS record, or encouraging the contracting officer to go ahead and get your information into CPARS. Ask for a copy of that CPARS submission, and if time permits, request corrections. I've also seen clients who have responded to the CPARS submission and ask the contracting officer to highlight certain things, or reminding them of certain activities that they did that were above and beyond what was requested in the statement of work, so that it can be recognized when someone else should look at that report. The other data confirmation that frequently becomes a challenge and can become a sticking point when responding to solicitations, especially now that we see frequently a request for the reports from FPDS and other applications. Confirm that your data is correct, and this really applies to those projects in which you are a prime. Subcontracting work does not appear in FPDS. It's specifically for prime contracting work, and what you're looking for is to confirm that your NAICS codes are correct, to confirm that your product service codes, your PSC codes are correct, and that the period of performance is correct. This will be especially important, and we'll talk about this on an upcoming slide when we talk about the category management or best-in-class solicitations that are now emerging on the market. Oftentimes they rely on reports that look at the FPDS data, and if that data is not correct, you usually are under the gun, or there's a quick turnaround time to try to correct it. And oftentimes it takes longer than the 2 or 3 weeks that the solicitation allows for the FPDS data to be updated. So start now preparing, taking a look at your data. Again, this applies to contracts in which you are a prime. If you have not seen FPDS before, there's a quick tutorial, and it's very easy to manipulate the data in terms of making the request. You may have to reach out to the contracting officer to ask them to make sure that the product service codes and NAICS codes are up to date. Updating and planning now, and when this is usually more internally focused than externally focused, and that's looking at making any changes to any government-wide acquisition contracts that you have, or any schedules that are used by your organization. If there's administrative points of contact to be updated, make them now. If there's additional labor categories that you want to add them now so that they can go through the process of being vetted and signed off on. And then planning for surge support. When I worked for employers where we were anticipating the busy buying season, we would look at what we currently knew that we were going to respond to, things that were in our pipeline, and what may be anticipated. And we would look to see if we could find individuals, whether they were freelancers or 1099s, or working with a third-party agency to find individuals who might serve as reviewers or book bosses or coordinators, just for a 2 or 3 week period, or desktop publishers, or additional staff that could come in. We typically rely upon people within the organization to serve as subject matter experts, but when multiple efforts are underway, it helps to have that additional resource in place, that surge support in place, that will help with continuing to move forward with all the solicitation responses. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions before we get into the more specifics regarding the strategies. One of the strategies that I'm suggesting, and again, this strategy is applicable for regardless of business size. The first is pivoting the process. And what I mean by that is allowing time to determine the window for review time, for formatting, and time for input. When I am working on short turnaround, my calendar looks very different than when I am responding to a solicitation that's due in 15 days, 30 days, or 60 days. And what I'm suggesting here are some steps that you may be able to implement. Again, this assumes that you have, that you are looking at how to manage this process so that you are basically all hands on deck. I use 24-hour increments, knowing that some people may be on site during the day and may have to work in the evening, but you are allowing for, one, virtual reviews. You're allowing for a recovery period that may be done in the evening, or it may be done early in the morning. But what you're doing here is building in time for a kickoff meeting by factoring in the amount of time that it would take to have a color reviews, and we'll talk about this more on the upcoming slide, to have color reviews, but also to allow people to make edits and updates, which I refer to as recovery. I want to make a differentiation between what I'm referring to here as a debrief and then an outbrief. A debrief is pulling all the feedback from the reviewers. And then the outbrief is when the reviewers come together, they literally summarize what their findings were. So that what I mentioned here regarding allowing for half a day for a review, allowing an hour to prepare the debrief, pulling together all the documentation, all the feedback from the reviewers, and then an hour for the outbrief. That's the reviewers coming together. This is one way of, again, compressing that time so that people have an opportunity to send the document out earlier in the day, but you still have an opportunity for people to move forward. And I'll talk on the upcoming slide what this looks like, or some methodologies to implement this. The recovery period, we do this today, but when we're in what I call this fourth quarter crunch, the recovery period, I generally shorten to about 6 hours. And part of that is because I've already identified information or data that I can use. If there's an existing management plan, how can I tweak that? If there's an existing security plan or quality control plan, how can we utilize that? I'll also talk on an upcoming slide about graphics and how that plays into this recovery period. The next strategy that I suggest is developing content options. And this ties back to my suggestion earlier regarding preparing now, and that is getting the outline out quickly, and the more detailed, the better. I tend to use annotated outlines, which means that the outline includes not only the information or the instructions from the solicitation. I may include the evaluation factors, but I also include, if there's a specific statement of work, statement of work scope, I include that information as well, just to remind the writers what they should be addressing. But I also will, if there's content that we've previously used, I will point the writer in that direction to help with providing them a jump start on the process, and prompting writers and subject matter experts to begin with their inputs and putting their information together. Now, this next bullet that I'm referring to as far as the rolling assembly, and this really becomes critical when you have solicitations with an extremely short period of time. When you have an extremely short period of time, you may have to use what's called a rolling assembly, an assembly line development, meaning that you put one part of the solicitation response together, you move on to the next, and you may have to wait until review time to put in the real inputs. If there's proof points that you want to address, putting those in at a later date. I'm going to pause here because I see that I have a question, so I want to make sure that I have addressed it. Okay. The question was to refresh me on how long out is past performance considered expired. And I should have mentioned that earlier. Past performance, depending on the client, generally past performance that are beyond 5 years are considered no longer relevant or recent. I shouldn't say they're no longer relevant, but they're no longer considered recent and would be considered expired, if you will. You can still talk about them in terms of your capabilities, but generally when an agency is looking for something that's recent and relevant, they will indicate 3 to 5 years. 5 is generally on the far end, especially when we're talking about technology. But beyond the 5-year period, I tend to move the past performance information into the capabilities. That's a good question. Thank you for asking. I mentioned earlier about being flexible regarding the review approaches and outbrief and debrief. One of the first approaches, and I should mention, I have been trained in the Shipley process, and I know that there are 99 steps in the Shipley process, and I will be the first to tell you that all 99 steps do not apply to every solicitation response. So blending reviews is one approach where it allows you to combine, and in this example I mentioned a blue and a pink, or a pink and red, depending on the time and information available. What I do not generally combine are red and gold reviews. And so I think for a minute I need to just talk about the different reviews. A blue generally is just a check-in in terms of outline and where we want to go in terms of layout, format. Pink is really looking more at are we on the right path regarding our content and checking in with the writers. Do you have what you need? A red review is actually your compliance review. And the compliance review, your document should be fairly mature and fairly complete in development before you go to a red review. Oftentimes the pink and red get combined because some sections have not been fully developed to the point of being ready, and we see frequently that they are combined. Beyond a red review is a gold review. A gold review, the document should be, I'd say 95% complete. And I say 95% because this document goes before or is presented to the leadership, whether it's a single entity or teaming partners that have come together. They are reviewing the document, and there may be things that they want changed or that they don't see that should be added to the document. And that's why I mentioned the 95%, just to make sure that the senior leadership has signed off on the document before it goes to a final review, a final edit and final production. There is another review that is specifically targeted at pricing, and that's the green review. But for the approaches that I'm talking here, I'm talking primarily about the technical portions, and that again would include your past performance management, staffing plans, anything that does not have to do with price. The green review is specifically for price, and it runs in parallel with the pricing, with the technical development. Staggered reviews, and in the proposal support world, there's been a lot of talk about getting away from having the review cycles that I mentioned, where you progress from a pink to a red to a gold review. Instead, having what's called a staggered review, or in some circles, there's been talk of using an agile approach. For those of you that are in the software development field or IT, you know that with agile, there are stage gates, and there are sprints, and at each sprint, there is an anticipation that these are the steps that will be completed before you move on to the next sprint. Staggered reviews, in a way, are very similar to an agile approach to proposal development or solicitation response development. You review the sections as they are ready, and you don't wait for the entire document to achieve the same level of maturity. What does that mean in real terms? So if you know that the management approach is going to be done first, you focus on getting the management approach done. Once that's done, then you move on to the next section. If you have a technical and management that are going to be due at the same time, the review would cover both the technical as well as the other section identified. This will allow for the team or the subject matter experts to focus on what can be done quickly or they know that they can address and be compliant and then work on other sections in the next review cycle. Rolling reviews, and they're very similar to staggered reviews, but the rolling reviews, you are literally looking at snapshots of a document or a section. This is really helpful if you have an individual or individuals who are serving as reviewers working with the document from beginning to end, because they can literally look at what's been updated, make feedback, and then continue on to the next action item and edits. I want to talk a little bit more about these reviews approaches, especially when we're talking about responding to solicitations where there's a lot coming through, and how to best address this. For those of you that have applications that allow for multi-party input and updates, tools like Privia or Please Review, you can upload the document to provide or to allow for the staggered and the rolling reviews. You can also, if you do not have a third-party application, if you're using SharePoint, you can upload the document. Encourage the subject matter experts, reviewers, and writers to use SharePoint, but to use the check-in and check-out feature so that there's version control on the document. Within the document, you would be using track changes. Again, this requires using Microsoft Word Online, which sometimes, depending on the version that the user is using, sometimes the track changes may not reflect well in the document, but SharePoint would also support staggered reviews and rolling reviews. What if you don't have Office 365 or SharePoint access at this time? There are other applications. For example, Google Docs would support both a staggered review and a rolling review. In that case, you upload the document to Google Docs, you provide access. When the writer or the subject matter expert or the reviewer logs in, there is an option where they can indicate that their edits are listed as suggestions. And so as a reviewer goes through and makes changes or makes suggestions to a section, those changes appear as recommendations or comments in which the writer can now see what has been suggested. They can either accept the change, or they can decline the change, or they can resolve the change. Another application that would support both staggered reviews and rolling reviews is Dropbox. Again, you would upload the file into Dropbox, allow and encourage the users to use the online version of editing the document. Any edits or changes that are made appear as comments. Again, you can accept or reject the comments that are provided from the reviewers or another subject matter expert. I'm going to pause at this to see if there are any questions regarding what I've mentioned regarding alternate review approaches, as well as what I mentioned regarding the content and the scheduling and outlining. The next methodology is creating flexibility, and we do this in general. We do this currently. If you're responding to solicitations, you're already creating flexibility. But what this allows for creating a flexibility is putting basic guidelines to minimize the effort required at the end. So in this example, I mentioned a request for proposal calls for Times New Roman format, in 12-point format. Tell the writers that and tell them to use that. And if there's an accepted color scheme or table or figure format and number system, tell them. I take it one step further. And in part of Prepare Now, you can have pre-developed formats. So when I send out an outline to the team, it's already set up in Times New Roman with the appropriate font, if it should be double spaced, I've already set it up. I also do the same thing with the tables and figure formats. I go ahead and pre-format that so that all I need at that point from the subject matter experts or teaming partners is for them to move the content in. If they copy and paste with the option of keeping the text only so that it aligns with what's already been pre-established in the document, it will retain what I've already established as the font for the document. If that doesn't happen, it's easy enough to fix. It may be take a little extra time, but by sending out the document up front with the formatting, it will help with creating flexibility and keep your subject matter experts focused. So I'm going to pause for a second because I want to talk also about graphics, and graphics usually require the most lead time. If you have a proposal library, or if there are graphics that you prefer to use or you like to use, and you're responding to opportunities, especially when you are looking at an assembly line or rolling review, queue up the graphics that you want to address quickly so that you can either have them formatted to correlate with your color scheme, or, and I have made this request, if the graphic can be manipulated, manipulated as needed. If there's a specific font requirement, be able to change that. And what I mean by that is, if you have a graphic that's been created in a tool such as PowerPoint, it's fairly easy to change the font size so that it aligns with the customer requirements. Or note before in your preparation time, what are the graphics that you're most likely to use over repeatedly. So if there's an org chart, if there is an approach to a particular methodology that you like to use, or a best practice, queue those up. Ask, either if you're using a third-party graphic designer, ask them to create it for you so that there are fields that are editable, or if it's something that you have created internally, you can create it so that the fields are editable and can be quickly edited, or the color scheme can be changed quickly. If there's a third party involved, you may want to consider how often will you need to change the color scheme, or how often, what elements will need to be changed, or are you showing a generic representation? I'm going to pause here to see if there's questions regarding the creating flexibility. So I've received a question. I want to make sure I address it. The question was, not sure if you answered this. What's the reason for submitting our SAM, System for Award Management reps and certs with our proposal? I thought contracting officers were supposed to go to SAM as the authoritative source. They can go to SAM, but if the solicitation requests that you include your reps and certs, and they do from time to time, they will ask that the reps and certs be included in either the pricing volume, or sometimes there's another volume which is considered the offeror's documents. In those instances in which you are asked to provide your reps and certs, you need to provide them. Not providing them is considered non-compliance. Yes, the contracting officer could look, but if they've asked for them, it generally means that they're not going to look. And I suspect the reason that they're now allowing for a copy of the reps and certs to be downloaded from the System for Award Management is because people would either not check off the appropriate box, or this representation of the report from SAM not only shows that you are registered in SAM, but it shows when you last updated your registration in SAM. I hope that answers that question. If not, please let me know. Before I move on to category management, I just want to make sure that I've addressed any other questions related to the prepare and the steps and the methodologies that I mentioned. Okay, category management, and many of you have either been involved with responding to a solicitation that is part of category management. It is a trend that is going to become more commonplace. It is a result of the government's goal to include IT modernization and reshaping of several agencies. What we have seen is that there's going to be some transformation. Category management is considered one of these cross-agency priorities. And what the intent of category management was to, and I'm going to quote here, by 2020, the government will achieve $18 billion in savings for taxpayers by applying category management principles. And they are hoping that they'll do this through best value contract solutions to 60% of common spend. But what they're trying to do, what category management is, common contracts so that they can be leveraged across agencies and achieve efficiencies. Having said that, what the General Services Administration has, their approach to category management is to address these or label these or categorize these common contracts as best in class. And we're seeing them. It's alive and well. We've seen several best in class. Best in class is considered that it's officially preferred by the Office of Management and Budget. It's considered to provide pre-vetted solutions that's applicable across federal agencies. But having said that, category management has also generated concern within the small business community because of the speed of the category management or best in class and the involvement and how can small businesses be involved. We have seen some efforts regarding best in class, and I'm going to show you a list of what's currently identified as best in class. Does it allow for small businesses to be involved? And some of these best in class efforts do. Alliant to Small Business. We saw Vets 2, which was specifically for veteran-owned businesses to be involved. And I had the opportunity to sit in on a briefing last week regarding current policy changes. There's been more feedback from the small business community to Congress, specifically the House of Representatives. And I believe it was a week ago, the House of Representatives was looking at category management and how to make sure that small businesses had an opportunity to be engaged in the category management efforts. I'm mentioning this because you may see category management efforts as part of this fourth quarter spend that may lapse over or transition over to fiscal year 2019. And what I talked about earlier in terms of preparing and especially looking at your data is going to be even more critical when we talk about category management, because the category management solicitations don't use a narrative as we see today frequently, where you're writing out your management plan. They often rely on completing a document, completing an Excel spreadsheet that's a rubric and indicates whether you've performed the work. And in order to respond to those questions, you must know what your data is, whether that's your NAICS codes, the agency's code, or the product service code. And it requires really being on top of what's been recorded in either CPARS or if you have data in FPDS. And if you are a sub on a project, relying on the prime to provide you with the accurate information and get sign off on the required documents. Here's a list of the current solicitations or contracts that are considered best in class. I mentioned Alliant Small Business. You also see the BETS 2, the government-wide acquisition contract. This list is, they're all active links, so when you receive this PowerPoint deck, you'll be able to click on each of these best in class for more information. The best in class will also provide examples. I know Oasis and Oasis Small Business provide examples so that you can actually see how to respond to the solicitation and make a determination as to whether or not it's best for a business to respond as solo or to team. Teaming with the best in class is perfectly acceptable, and it's encouraged, especially if it will help you maximize the number of points so that you can be selected or part of the group that is awarded access to these best in class contracts. I'm showing this slide because I want to, again, show you what's going to be happening in terms of the current state there and why the government has been talking about category management, and how, as part of responding to responding to opportunities in the future, that we're going to see more category management, especially with the common management framework and the core competencies leveraged to match the customer needs. We're going to see this more and more often so that we can best position our data, our past performance, and when we're looking for our how to approach, we can do so in a systematic and efficient fashion. Again, this slide is in the deck so that you can see more closely. You can already see GSA, we see the Department of Homeland Security, and we see that NOAA is also looking at using category management and will be using category management in the future. I'm going to pause here to see if there are questions regarding category management. While I'm pausing, I want to address a question I received, which was, has the Shipley approach kept up with current trends? And if so, is it a good investment? Shipley Associates, and I'm not advocating for them when I say this, looks at the full breadth of responding to solicitations from a customer. There's business development, capture management, and proposals. Most of us focus on the proposal aspect, and what I'm talking about today focuses a lot on preparing to respond. But before we get to the actual stage of responding, there's the business development, which is developing a relationship with the customer, capture, getting the intel, and it's a life cycle. It's a continuous life cycle. So even after we respond to a solicitation, the business development and capture cycle continues, even if we move on from one agency to another. Is it a good investment? I think it depends on what a business is looking for. There is training for capture management. There is training for business development. There's also training for proposal support, and that includes proposal management and proposal writing. There are other institutions that offer similar training, so whether it's a good investment, I think would really be dependent on a specific company's needs and wants. But it is one of several tools. I know that Shipley is considered a gold standard, but there are other training and methodologies available that are very similar. So I don't want to tell people Shipley is the only way. It's the training that I've received, but I also have received training from other institutions as well. So when we talk about category management, again, and managing the initiative, there's some takeaways that I would like to encourage you to think about. One is talking with your contracting offices to learn about the potential impacts and if your contracts meet the criteria to transition from their current state to being part of category management solicitation. Leverage and market your GSA schedule. So if you have a GSA schedule during this last quarter, go ahead and leverage it as much as possible. And we know that a majority of the best-in-class, the GWACs and the BPAs, they have locked-in ramp-on periods. So they're going to be looking for additional options, whether that's using your GSA schedule. If you have another schedule that you want to present, let your contracting officer know that. If you're not on a GSA schedule, think about getting on a GSA schedule. One of the GSA schedules that is getting more attention and we'll see getting more attention because some of the previous smaller schedules are now being rolled up into the professional services schedule, PSS, or Schedule 70, which has in the past been primarily focused on IT. And then if you're in the services industry, consider the category management and bid on the RFP when it becomes available. Category management really is looking at a broad scope of services. The PSS schedule does that, but category management will also allow for those who provide services to leverage their past performance, whether that past performance was performed in a federal space or in a commercial space, as long as it's recent and relevant. Some of the areas that we're seeing for category management where for those who are in the services industry really can leverage their experience is in the area called the Internet of Things, IoT. I'm going to pause here to see if there's any questions. I see that I have a question and my thoughts on proposal preparation software. I think it can be a worthwhile investment. I definitely would check, ask for references and try it out. With the question regarding proposal preparation software, generally what the proposal preparation software will do is it will help with establishing outlines. It will help with shredding, that is looking for all of the clauses in the solicitation that must be addressed. There's still some fallibility with those applications. So if you're going to use them, make sure that you customize it to what you need. I had the pleasure of working on a solicitation response earlier this year with a client, and they had a proposal development tool, but the proposal development tool was still reliant on a person developing the outline and putting it inward and uploading it. So it has not gotten to the point where the applications have not gotten to the point where they actually do the writing. They'll allow you to insert the content and make reviews and provide track changes. But what you really want to look for is make sure that those comments and that content can be integrated seamlessly without creating additional work for the person who is doing the integration of the comments and feedback. Another question I've received is, how will category management opportunities be designated in FBO? So OASIS, and let me go back to that slide. These applications were all listed in Alliant Small Business, Alliant, HCATS, the OASIS networks, and Schedule 70 were all listed on FBO with their actual solicitation name. And the way that you know that they are category management is they actually have information regarding the worksheets that need to be used. They look like Excel spreadsheets. They are Excel spreadsheets. And you'll be given instructions on how to respond to those Excel spreadsheets, the data that's needed. These best-in-class are managed by the General Services Administration. Even though that's and it is for veteran-owned businesses, it is managed by the General Services Administration. Let me know if there are other questions regarding the category management or any other aspects. I'm looking at the clock and I realize that we are nearing the 3 p.m. hour. We're almost at the top of the hour. I mentioned that I would not be addressing these slides, but I just want to let you know that the What's Trending talks about the trends, and you may have seen some of these trends already, which one that we're hearing a lot of talk about now is the other transactional authority. So take a look at this. You'll see that these trends are applying across agencies. And with that, I will pause again to see if there are any additional questions. As mentioned at the start of the presentation, if you have additional questions, feel free to send them to Donna and Barbara. They will be sent to me, and I'm happy to address them. I want to thank you for your time. These have been very good questions. I hope that this information has proved useful to you as you move forward with responding to solicitations in the fourth quarter. I wish you success in your endeavors. Barbara, Donna, do you want to take the line from here?
Yes, thank you so much, Tina, for that incredible presentation and tips on how to take, advantage of the busy buying season and strategies on how to manage and respond to opportunities. Great advice given and things we can do ahead of time so that we are better prepared to respond. And I want to thank our participants for attending the VIP webinar and to the SBA for making this webinar possible. Again, I hope you found the information presented to be helpful as you prepare your company to be competitive and compliant. I would like to ask that you take a moment to complete the very short survey that will be sent to you immediately following this program. Your feedback is very important to us. Also, I wanted to let you know that the slides and the audio will be available to you pretty much immediately after this program. I want to also thank you for your patience for a technical difficulty, but we were able to dial in as a participant, and Tina, you came over loud and clear, and thank you again. We wish you all continued success in this busy buying season. Good luck and go win something. Take care.